Welcome, everyone, to another Exceptional Admins podcast episode. Well, also, this is going to be up on YouTube as video. I am so excited about my guest today. I am in a total student position. There is so much to learn from my guest, Jessica McBride, today that I just can't wait to dive in. We're going to jump in. We're going to be talking about technology, the administrative profession, and how those two are weaving together. Jessica, thank you so much for being on the show and giving us your time. I really appreciate it.
For sure. I'm really excited to be here, Helani. So excited to talk about ChatGPT, AI, and other ways that we can use technology and start utilizing it in the admin professions so that, as the future continues to future, we can keep up with it. We can be relevant and, really shift the admin profession with this new wave of technology.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're hearing so many people concerned about how do I stay relevant? Like how, we're seeing, a lot of reports about how the loss of jobs is going to come because, technology is going to take all of our jobs. And I think that I like to take a more middle of the road acknowledgement of this, of that, yes, it's going to change the way that we do work, but it's also going to be able to change it in such positive ways that I'm always excited to get out here and kind of have a chance to talk about how we can do that, how we can implement it going forward.
So this whole AI thing is new. Clearly, you've been working for a while prior to all of this AI as a part of our conversations. Walk us through kind of your journey in your career and kind of what led you to where you are today.
So I'm a millennial. I started learning computers kind of I hit that sweet point of we had a computer lab in our school that was well funded. So learned how to, use all the different Microsoft programs very young. I was in Business Professionals of America. Shout out to being a giant nerd. And
I love
it. But, always found that I enjoyed working with technology and not in a I want to learn to code way, but I was an ADHD or an undiagnosed one. And if there's one skill that neurodivergents have, it is finding the most efficient way possible to do something. And I'm a big fan of that. Okay. So my career started out with I didn't know what I wanted to do. I tried, I've probably had 12 different jobs in my life. I started out working in apartment leasing. Was always really frustrated. I back when, we used fax machines was our main, method of communicating with people.
Uh-huh.
And, later on transitioned to working in, for enterprise, in their fleet department. So I had a very strong, corporate upbringing of this is how you, perform in a corporate environment. And then when I moved to Canada, I kind of had to reshift my career because when you move to another country, they don't really care about what you did in your last country. They just kind of make you start all over. So my first job in Canada was an executive assistant role, and they were paying me $35,000 Canadian a year. And it was one of the most chaotic places I've ever worked. It was a couple that would just have arguments. I would sit between them, and then they would have arguments over my head. So
Okay.
I didn't last very long in that role, but I was I really think that I could be a really good executive assistant, if given,
Was that the first
the
time you heard
support.
the title?
I think it was, yeah. I mean, I've heard of it, right? And I always, my mother-in-law, she was a career EA, and she'd always kind of talked about it. And so I was oh, I think that is where my skill sets would lie in really well because it's a very generalist skill set.
Uh-huh.
But that job didn't last. So I had other series of jobs where I was just kind of learning business operations. And this is where I really got some great insight into the way that a bunch of different organizations operate. And it gives you a lot of perspective of every company is a complete mess. It doesn't matter what organization you're working for. They are all just have their own issues.
Yeah.
And it's just learning how to cope with it. Right. So there was always a reason that kept me from staying at a job. And a lot of it was my mental health. I didn't enjoy a really stringent work environment where I was expected to show up and be in an office 8 hours a day. And it was really bad for my mental health. And, one of those things that you don't actually realize how bad it is until the pandemic hits. And then we're all working from home. And it went, why is my life so much better working from home than it was working in an office? I'm no longer feeling the need to work all day and then go lay in a dark room in the quiet for 4 hours just to try and recover, which kind of led to me discovering the ADHD thing.
Yeah.
But,
How great to have
everything.
answers though, right?
Oh my God, so life changing.
Yeah.
Um, so in all of my jobs though, there was like this very like this link of like I ended up always being the technology person, like the person that you could come to and say like, I can't figure out how to PDF this document, or I can't figure out how to get this printer to work properly. And like, it's not that like I'm an exceptionally technical person. It's that like I'm really good at Googling things. I'm really good at just like thinking about other times that like I've experienced that kind of situation and like how I can like go from there.
Mm-hmm.
So I started pulling from like all of the different roles that I kind of had done when I
Mm.
quit a job in 2021 because I started working for a company that I thought was going to be like my dream role. I was like, I'm going to work my way up in this company. It's going to be amazing. And then
Yeah.
9 months in, I'm like laying on my bedroom floor crying every morning about like how I'm supposed to like go and do this job.
Ugh.
So I said, I just quit. I just outright like it's something that like I never pictured myself doing because who quits without a backup plan? But that's how
Right.
desperate the situation
Right.
was.
Yeah.
So quit that job, had a friend that was freelancing. She told me about it and I said, okay, I'm going to give this a go. And, threw myself into freelancing. I was using Upwork to get clients. And I started working with, after about 2 months, a client, and it was really great. It was a great connection. It's, fully remote. So like I have that flexibility. Being a freelancer, it's basically like, a business owner working with a business owner. So they can't legally tell you what to do or when to do your work.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it built this level like of confidence, and the autonomy that it gave me really just like helped me grow so much in my career,
Mm-hmm.
which led me to January of 2023 this year when I was feeling really stagnant at this job at that point. Like I kind of had done so many things and I think the bloom had kind of fallen off the rose and like my relationship with the CEO wasn't going as well as it had been previously. And I wasn't being given the autonomy to kind of do what I wanted to do, but still wasn't ready to like make a leap. I wasn't ready to just, it was like, well, I'm healing, I'm resting. This is like my relaxation period.
So much
Um,
self-discovery. So
yes,
much self-discovery, which can happen in a small amount of time or a lot of time, but it's so powerful to get to that point of like, what's going on? What am I doing? Which Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? You get to that very
yeah,
top tier. Self-actualization is like the biggest zen, the biggest
yeah.
zen. Okay, keep
It
going. I love it.
changed me. It
Yeah.
changed so much. When I got injured on vacation in January, I love to tell the story of how like I slipped and fell on vacation,
Oh,
3 hours into my Mexican resort vacation, and I just obliterated my knee. And I was on bed rest the rest of the trip. And then even after I got home, I was on bed rest for like 6 weeks or something.
mm.
And what that did was that forced me to rest, like really rest for the first time in a
Yeah,
really
really
long
rest.
time
Yeah.
because you have nothing else to do, right? So it was, what am I going to do to fill all this time? And on TikTok, ChatGPT was trending. And I love a good rabbit hole, like any type of thing that can suck me in. So I said, let me look into this a little bit more. And I started testing it out. And I found what an amazing tool this was for everyone, especially, but like admins. What if we took, I started trying a bunch of different scenarios from my executive assistant like groups that I'm in. Of like they had this problem. How would ChatGPT solve this? And I started realizing that like so much of the stuff that we do that we have been given no written instruction or guidance on how to do, ChatGPT can be there for us, and we can utilize this tool to build processes within our organization or like help us understand something that we maybe weren't understanding as baseline.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Mm-hmm.
how many times have we been asked to create a document and we're like, well, what is that? And how do I do it? But we're never really given an answer.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of kicked off, tech savvy assistant. That it was a tech savvy assistant at that point. I was just calling it Chat GPT for executive assistants.
Right.
And got some feedback from a peer who was like, hey, you might be limiting yourself a little bit with that. And so, playing around with different things, came up with tech savvy assistant. And I thought that it had a good ring to it.
Yeah.
And then I got laid off in February. So I said, well, am I going back into finding a regular job or what am I doing? And I spent probably about a month and a half interviewing really hard for jobs.
Yeah.
And it never felt right. It never felt
Yeah.
like all it did was make me feel really badly about myself because like I feel like
Oh,
I have like confidence and I feel really secure in who I am.
sure.
And then I would go into these interviews and be like, "We love you, we just hate you. Like we just can't
Oh my
live today.
God, I'm
We live.
devastated.
You're just not the right person." And it was like
Damn.
I was getting so much traction with tech savvy assistants, and I was making such great connections, and the support that I've been getting from our industry and our
Sure.
community of people has been just
Yeah,
really great. And steadily, it just became more evident to me that I'm not someone who can work in a traditional 9 to 5 office.
sure.
It just doesn't work for my brain style. And what if I just bet on myself for once? What if,
Oh,
like,
I love
after
it.
all
Yeah.
these years of second guessing myself and feeling like, I couldn't do it? What
Uh-huh.
if I just started betting on myself? And
And this
so I
isn't the
think,
forever. Some people who've reached out to me and say, I want to go independent and freelance, they're like, what do you think? And I'm like, well, I know you came to me because I'm going to give it to you straight. They're like, that's exactly what I need. I'm like, it could be good. It could be bad, kind of talk about just some of the business components. Like, what do you want to do? And I think also there's been this acceptance of the freelance component since COVID, because people are like, I'm out, especially working moms who did have a lot more on their platter to handle. And they're like, I'll freelance, I'll do virtual assisting while I'm home, homeschooling, like all these, the list carries on. I think that's awesome for you. I think
yeah,
that's amazing.
my dad was military. My mom, sacrificed her chance at a career and her livelihood to, help my dad and
Yeah.
raise the children and, go around the country.
Yeah.
And, that's something that's really sticks with me about freelancing and virtual assisting, especially, is that this is an opportunity for women, especially, to reinsert themselves into the workforce with
Yeah.
that flexibility and that accommodation that they need
Yeah.
and deserve,
Yeah.
frankly, that we wouldn't always be able to get within a regular organization. I think
Mm-hmm.
that freelancing is such an amazing option, especially as we're entering into yet another recession where we're being thrust in survival mode. It's,
For sure. For sure.
for me, freelancing was the difference of I got laid off and I'm making money again by next Monday.
Right.
Versus, if I was still like searching for a job every day, just like hoping like that I could like hit the right one and things are
Yeah.
going to be good,
Mm-hmm.
I could still be looking for a job full time if I had just,
That is a
stay with
full-time
that and
job.
not freelancing.
I
Oh my
tell
God.
all the candidates, I was on the phone with someone yesterday. I'm like, it's a full-time job that's
It was,
not
it
paying.
was so draining.
But there's it, and for those that kind of get into this space of that search, um, it's a self-discovery period. And we want to sort of avoid that, but we need that so that kind of to the point of what your journey is that authenticity of like, who the hell am I? How am I
Yeah.
actually going to add value? What the hell have I been doing? What do I want to do next? And so I love that rabbit hole comment you made earlier and the ChatGPT. I didn't know what this was until I looked it up because I wanted to be kind of smart in front of you because this is your area of expertise. Generative pre-trained transformer.
Okay.
Mouthful.
Yep.
Thank God they made it short to GPT
Yeah.
because that's a mouthful. Try to say that 5 times. Let's talk a little bit about that because before this really started to take headlines to us as administrative individuals, it was Slack, it was Asana, it was Trello, it was maybe Zapier, it was, HubSpot, thinking of those technologies. We are like
Mhm.
at a whole nother universe of these things. Yes, I made a ChatGPT account a couple of weeks ago, knowing that we were having this conversation. I couldn't get in. They had like reached a limit and they said, come back tomorrow kind of thing in like so many words. I was like, oh my gosh, I need to get in there before I have this meeting with Jessica. So I had it open all day yesterday. And I've also, now that I've been talking about it, of course, my phone has heard it. So of course, now it's showing up in my feed, like people that are talking about it. There are so many ways to use this. Some are hesitant. And so I want to acknowledge that some are like, I don't know, to your point made earlier, which many of us have been wondering, like, are we going to get eliminated? Are we going to quote be obsolete? I don't believe so. And I'm excited for you to dive into that. So tell us how, and maybe there's like a launch pad, right? Like there's an entry point to understanding Chat GPT. Why don't I let you just take it away on that?
Okay. I think that the basic way to understand ChatGPT and other large language models that we can talk about as well is that consider it like think of it like an automated word processor. and that
Yes.
it's fantastic for generating text, or other technologies that you can use ChatGPT for would be like text to image. So you would describe an image and then it would create it for you. This opens up a lot of doors, and that, something that I've talked about with the ADHD is like the task paralysis. A lot of times, if I get given an assignment and I know that I'm really capable, but like sometimes just getting started is really difficult. So using ChatGPT, you can go in and you can basically get like a first draft. You can get something that kind of gets your ideas going.
Mm-hmm.
You see a lot of people that will use it to go in and they say, like, I didn't know how to use Chat GPT as an executive assistant, so I asked Chat GPT. And then it's the same like formula of like, here's 5 ways you can use Chat GPT in your role as an executive assistant. And
Yeah.
it's very, very vague. So think of it, it's the first draft probably isn't going to be what you ever want to use to,
Mm-hmm.
put forward. But when we talk about using it for like a standard operating procedure, say you're the CEO that you're supporting company and it's like, hey, we need to roll out a standard operating procedure for using the company credit card because people are just using it willy-nilly and we need to put something in
Right.
writing. So you recognize that there are outline steps somewhere of like what somebody should do, but like, how are you like, you're going to go and you're like, how do I think about all these steps? And like, you're going
The
to miss
cursor
something.
is blinking on the page and it's
Yes.
not moving. So you go, okay, great.
So you're gonna, yeah. And then even like once you make it, you're still gonna iterate on it 14 times because you're gonna have missed a different step and you're gonna need to go in and like change things. So let's take that process and streamline it by 40%. And saying, let's go to Chat GPT and say, create a standard operating procedure for using the company credit card. And it's gonna outline 8 steps that you should consider. And then you'll take that and put it into your word processor, your Google Docs, your Microsoft Word, and you're going to personalize it to your organization. But at
Mm-hmm.
least you know the steps that you would want to consider.
That's right.
It's the same thing with like an
Consider.
onboarding. Yeah, with like an onboarding manual. We know that there are certain legal considerations that we want to like make sure that we're covering. But maybe we don't know how to capture them all. So I was working with a client recently that he owns a construction company. We want to make an onboarding manual. So we can make an onboarding manual and then we can personalize it to his industry by saying like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, it's construction company. So consider what are some other things that we should consider? Things like tool maintenance. And then it's going to provide guidelines of, maintaining your tools. Um, it's also just like this fantastic thought partner of here's the plan that I have made. What am I not thinking of? What have I missed? What
Mm-hmm.
are the things that are going to come up later down the road that somebody's be like, hey, you forgot to include this.
Yep.
So it's just very much like having a collaborative coworker that like you can just go to and toss ideas at, and it's going to give you feedback. And OpenAI, the company that created ChatGPT, there's some vagueness about how they collected their information, but essentially it was trained on large portions of data on the internet up to 2021. So it's on text, it's on people's opinion pieces.
Right.
So as an amazing tool as it is, it's still a deeply biased tool. So when you are using ChatGPT, when you're using any AI, you need to be sure that you are assessing it for bias because
Yeah.
there was a situation. A great example that I like to quote is Alicia of EA How To had asked ChatGPT, or not ChatGPT, it was a different generative AI platform, to draw an example of CEOs and draw an example of executive assistants.
I think I saw this on LinkedIn. Yeah.
Came back with men
Men.
as the CEOs
Yeah.
and women as the
Women.
executive
Right.
assistants.
Right.
Okay. Well, that's because the data it's trained on has said that it's more likely that a man is going to be a CEO and that it's more
Right.
likely that a woman will be the EA. So that's a very blatant example of like, this is the way that bias has been built in because we're humans and we have bias.
Right.
So I would be careful when recommending using AI to like analyze people's resumes or things like that. Like I would be very careful.
Yeah.
But there's also ways that you can use it to play to your advantage of saying like, here's my resume or here's my cover letter. Write it more assertively. Write
Yeah.
it more, and so that it says better things about me. Like it
Yeah.
rewrites my statement to make it because
Right.
I'm terrible about promoting myself. I'm like,
Yeah,
it's so uncomfortable for me as a woman who's been trained by society to like stay humble and like not
that's
talk about
right.
yourself
Suppress
too
it.
much.
Yep. Hmm.
So, ChatGPT gives me the strength to be like, yeah, I'm great. Like it helps me put things into words that I wouldn't be able to normally do on my own.
Hmm.
So, and other great use cases, like I said, are for your resume, for cover letters. And I guess kind of circling back to like what it is,
Yeah.
like I said, large language model produces large amounts of text. Security issues is that security is getting better with it in terms of they're becoming more and more transparent about how your data is used. You can
Yeah.
now also opt out of it training on your data. Um, and when people talk about, you see in the news that they tend to be very like scandalizing and like, concerning about like, it's going to be so evil, blah, 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 blah.
Right. I love your
Technology
word
is neutral.
scandalizing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like technology is just neutral. It's how
Sure.
people opt to utilize it.
That
And
was the thing I kept thinking about, the opt to use it. And yesterday I was throwing into it. I was totally doing spaghetti tests. Like I just threw something at it. For example, I've been doing research on the blood type diet. And so I threw in a quick query, this blood type, what would be a grocery list? And it populated. And because I've been doing the research and I've read the book, I was like, oh, like there it is. Like that's the grocery list. And it categorized it by this. I actually saw a woman on Instagram talk about how she does it to make her meal planning and grocery list for the week. I
Mhm,
was like, oh my God,
mhm.
that's the game changer. That is the game
Yeah.
changer. So while we're talking about it for assistance, anyone who wants to kind of enter in and get used to it could be sort of in these softer questions. I also dropped in something and said check grammar and punctuation, and it kind of changed it out. And it was just it was great. There wasn't a lot that needed to be fixed, but there were just a few things. I was like, that is awesome. So some admins that want to check an email before it's gone out, this is your partner. And I loved how you have,
Mhm.
that thought partner was a word that you used earlier, which is really interesting because so much of us live on an island. We maybe can't go see so-and-so because they're in a meeting. Maybe we can sort of use the tool, or I believe we can use the tool, which is what we're digging into today. Okay, keep going. And I want to ask, have in the work that you've been doing and the admins that you've been working with, or even leaders, as you were just mentioning, the construction client, how are you seeing it really save people time? Or how have you seen it have a positive impact specific to faster output? So yeah, save people time.
Yeah. I think for me, like, especially, I think that I'm kind of like a great use case in that, like, I've been building a business with ChatGPT of like, you know, I don't think I would ever been able to get a handle on everything that I need to do to build a business without a tool like ChatGPT because
Yeah.
I grew up in South Texas. I, had a dad in the military and a mom that worked for a school district for a little bit. Like I was not exposed to people who own businesses or, how to succeed in life, right?
Mm-hmm.
The idea of like writing a business case or, thinking about the ways that like I can expand, they don't naturally occur to me.
Yeah.
So, for anybody that's running any kind of business, it's such a powerful tool to be like, okay, like what are the key components that I need to consider when building a business? Here is my business. What are some other ideas of ways that I can expand that business?
Mm-hmm.
Um, you can ask in it, what are ways that I can integrate AI into like the work that I'm doing?
I know. Ask it to
Um,
tell us how to use it, right?
yeah, yeah. And that I think that's been like such an incredible tool. Like the time saved is, I was doing research on some competitors for a client, and I was able to do probably 10 hours worth of research in maybe an hour. It's like, let me find the articles that I need, and then I can parse the information out using ChatGPT of like, okay, find the three most relevant points from this article that I need to like make note of.
Mm-hmm.
And like, so I don't have the brain capacity to read all of the words that
Too
people
long didn't
write in
read.
articles.
TLDR.
Yes,
Yeah. Too long didn't
I
read.
personally feel that people just they use words to use words. Like I will read articles and I'm like, this is too much for what should have just been a bulleted list.
Right.
Uh, and
Seriously.
I, and you're like,
Yeah.
I don't know why people aren't reading my work. That's why. That is because
Yeah.
it's very long.
Yeah.
So finding the key points in an article that I probably wouldn't have captured otherwise has been like really really helpful. And yeah, just like streamlining the idea of like, what a kind of operating procedures should I consider if I'm operating a business? Like, what are
Mhm.
the things that I should take into consideration? Has been really helpful for them. And
What
go ahead.
what other ways besides the operating procedure, what how are you hearing admins use, and there was Bard, which we were talking about before we started recording. So not just highlighting only ChatGPT, but there's a few others, and you could tell us what those others are. But how else are assistants using it, whether it saves them time or not, but elevates their impact by using this tool? What are other ways that they're able to use the tool?
One of the earliest case studies that are, I say case studies, that sounds so official, use cases
Yeah.
that I did was there's an admin in one of my groups that was needing to choose between two different cities in Japan. And like she posts into like this executive assistant group of 15,000 people, which is a big group.
Yeah.
But she's really hoping that like there's someone local to Japan that can give her like inside information. What are the odds? Like what are the odds like that's actually going to line up perfectly with the algorithm? It's not always like very likely, right? But I was able to run her query through ChatGPT and then get like a comparison of these two cities.
Nice.
And like her concerns were like, I want to stay somewhere that has good transit, and I want to know like that's like well situated, and it's a business meeting, so we want to make sure that there's like business appropriate restaurants nearby. And then you can run through that through ChatGPT, and it's going to give you a comparison of those two cities of like, okay, this one has better transit. This is the business district. This is the stuff that you should consider. And we always talk about ChatGPT. It only has data up to 2021. So like, would I
Right.
go to ChatGPT and say, please tell me the 5 most trendy restaurants in Los Angeles? No. But if you're considering going to two, major cities in Japan, the business district of 2021 probably still the business district of 2023. Like
Right.
there are some assumptions that we can make about like the relevancy of the places.
Yeah.
um and this is also you're able to tie in the part where we talk about the human touch, right? Because
Mm.
this is why AI isn't going to replace you. It's just going to streamline and free up time for you that you can then use on other things. Because I plan trips for myself, and the busier I've gotten as a person, the less joy I take out of planning those trips, because it's like, wow, I need to go and I need to spend 3 to 4 hours like researching all of these things. And that's a lot. It's a lot of time and energy. So it's like if I can do all of that in 1 hour, then I have 3 hours that I can then go and
So
use
amazing.
on so many other things. Um, so there's trips, there's project planning of like sometimes I just need a visual like breakdown of how I should begin planning a project. Like I volunteer with IAAP, and we're going to be planning a new like event of conference in April. And so we can go in and we're like, hey, we want to plan a conference in April. Give me a breakdown and a table of how I should plan this, starting with like if I need to start planning 6 months in advance, what should I be looking at?
Yep.
And it's going to list out all of the things that I would want to consider when planning a conference. And I've seen more than a few admins in my day get thrust into planning large events or conferences, and you have no context.
Hmm.
It's terrifying. It's so terrifying to not be able to like, how do I Google how to do this?
I'd be
Um,
curious if there was a protocol before, and then you have your protocol before for an event. You use the tool to just ask the query, and then yes, take the extra minutes to compare and say, we never thought of 5. We're adding 5 to the company process. 5 is totally what we need to be considering, because we also do get in the hamster wheel habit and the rinse and repeat habit of, well, this is how we've always done it. I did run a
yeah.
query in it yesterday asking how to have productive meetings. What are 10, I didn't want it to limit it. So I didn't want to say 10 steps or 5 steps. What is the best way to have productive meetings? And I was underwhelmed in its answer, because it was, which at least because I'm constantly doing work on this, it talked about and it gave it to me in a list, by the way, and it gave me 10 things, make an agenda, make sure everybody's prepared, make sure your slides are right. And I thought, it's got to be able to give me more, which I was just thinking about as you were describing. I think the upfront challenge for some is asking a basic question is likely to give a basic standard answer, What do you think about that? Because you do have to kind of think even deeper. And I wrote that down, think deeply, to not just go with one query, but then change it and ask it in a little bit of a different way to see that variance in the answer. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. Absolutely accurate. Just like when you have a conversation with somebody and you want to get, good information from them, the
Mm-hmm.
quality of prompts that you give is what's
Yeah.
really going to guide the conversation of how, I can get the information that I want. Um, I think about how there was such a shift for me when I became a business owner of when I was an EA and I would get given a task and they would be like, please do this. And like my thing is like, I have 15 questions. Let me just go in and like get all my questions out. And you know
Yeah.
what? As a business owner, I don't want to deal with that. When my husband was building my website and I would be like, hey, can you build a landing page? I didn't want him to come to me and ask me 15 questions about that landing page. I
Yeah.
just wanted to trust that he would do
You're in
it.
the seat of the CEOs now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and
It's
and
crazy.
it really gave me perspective of like how to be a better admin. And I think
Yeah.
that this is such a key tool for that.
Yeah.
Is your principal comes to you and says, please do this task. Go to ChatGPT, start. Say like, this is my task. What do I need to think about? Run through your things and figure out like what should I expand upon.
Yeah.
Get a first draft plan put together, and then you take it back to them and you
Yeah.
say, this is what I think, and this is what I pictured. Let's get some feedback on this. And then you can take that first draft
Yeah.
and like tweak it because people don't know what they're looking for 98% of the time.
I just had a revelation that for those that buckle up and and this might be great for sort of the introverts that, and I want to be very careful with my word choice, that do have, a heavy pause before they go to act because they don't want to look stupid. They
Mhm.
might fucking forget a question and they're like, oh my gosh, I got to ask for another minute because I've got to ask that question I didn't ask before. This could really help quite honestly, all bodies of admins, but help that level of preparedness at the onset versus fully relying on yourself, which I think also, and I'd like your thoughts on this. I wouldn't say it's going to make us dumber. It's going to make us definitely efficient, but it's also going to give us a chance to learn to be a bit smarter and proactive, especially in bullet form. When I'm working or talking to admins, there is this long-windedness. Clearly we're having a conversation here, so it's warranted, but that long-windedness, and then they stop wanting to go in because they can clearly see the frustration on their executive's face. And they're like, I don't want to see that face anymore. So then they
Yeah.
stop initiating, they stop proceeding forward. And then all of a sudden the self-guilt starts to come in, like, I'm not going anywhere in my career. And that's clearly another conversation that could take hours. I'm hearing, especially as you're describing that, it's a place for confidence building, as you were talking about a little bit for yourself. Tell us
Yeah.
a little bit about how you think that would be accurate for them getting the chance to get smarter, use
Yeah.
it to get the questions in advance, especially when we were just talking about, you've been asked a task, right? And then it's like, oh my
Yeah.
God, I got 15 questions.
I distinctly remember where I stopped caring if somebody thought I was stupid. And I think that it
Oh,
really,
that's so
I think
beautiful.
it
Yeah.
really like changed like the way
Isn't
that
it
like I interact.
so true?
And I
Yeah.
think that the last CEO that I supported, like I have my issues, but at the same time, was very supportive of me and was very like no stupid questions. Like yes, I could tell that he would prefer I not like bombard him with like 50 different, questions about a
Yeah.
task, but was really good about just like encouraging me to like branch out on my own. And I think that's part of the thing is that like getting comfortable and like taking these steps just slowly builds confidence.
Mm,
And when we're using chat gpt and it's like it just helps you get all your stupid questions like out and
yeah.
advance, and it's like
Uh-huh.
I'm streamlining a plan and I'm coming up with like what is the most important things that I need to consider.
Mm,
And you're finding like this happy medium of like I both need more information so I can give you the result that you want, but I
so
also
true.
recognize that you don't have a lot of time.
Yeah.
So how can I cut out the middleman, and how can I like get to get a better understanding of the way that your brain works and the way that
Mm-hmm.
you would make a decision.
Mm-hmm.
um and just, I guess I always go back to, you're not going to break anything. You're not, it's like come to the realization that you're not a bad person. Because I think that there's this idea of like, if I make a mistake, I'm a bad person. If I don't nail this project, I'm going to get fired.
Right.
We all, and like we live in this like society that we've all been like deeply traumatized of like, we're so afraid. We live in a society that has no safety nets. If we lose our job, that's our livelihood. And
Yeah.
so I get this is, it sort of back to the fear of like AI taking our role. This is because we have no options if something was to take our job outside of like being incredibly like inconvenienced, and it's a terrifying moment. But those things are dominoes, right? Like it takes time. Like it, yes, people get laid off, but like
Yeah,
there's a pattern, right?
for
Nobody's
sure.
getting fired because you go to your boss and you're like, hey, this is my first draft, and they're like, I don't like your first draft, like you're
Right.
fired. Like
Right.
that's not the way that it
That
works.
doesn't
It's
happen. Yeah.
creativity blossoms, and like your ability and your capabilities continue to grow and change with feedback. Like
Yeah.
I need to know feedback so that I can iterate and improve on a process. And it, it just kind of steadily grows from
Yeah.
that point of like, I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to say like, this is my first project,
Yeah.
and we're going to take the feedback and we'll go from there.
Yeah.
um but just like, don't be afraid. Like nobody gets anywhere in life by just
Uh-huh.
staying quiet. Oh, empty mouths don't get fed is another one I love to
That's a
use.
really good one. I haven't heard that one before. I've been doing quite a bit of research this year, which I believe has been due to the last 3 years on taking chances. And the amount of time that we take chances, um, more for others, but a small population of society are chance takers or risk takers, if you will. The other part of the population, they paralyze themselves due to, what are they going to think about me? How are they going to feel? And I'll tell you that authenticity of, not that you don't give a fuck, but the authenticity of caring less about those, because I know who I am. And so I'm hearing from using these tools. And I actually started playing around with it in the Magic Doc in Canva.
Mhm.
And once I tried that a few times, I thought, okay, this is opening the floodgates of some really amazing creative channels. And so I was thinking the context component for those that want to ask different questions, want to stand a little bit taller in how they present themselves, using a tool like this, getting those questions, your lead in is context is, we have gold, silver, and bronze. Context is the gold for me. I need to learn the additional context to become a historian on this new project, or become, the librarian, meaning the file of all the information when it comes to needing to look for something. Give me the context. I've got 5 questions. It's going to take us maybe 15 minutes, but I'm going to be able to be more powerful because I got in your head. Right. And I got the context. And for those that might not have those questions, I think that may be that soft entry point for people that want to start, playing around with the tool. The environment looks like an instant messaging from like Yahoo back in the day. I'm
Yeah.
older than you. I'm not a millennial, but from the back in the day. And I'm thinking you just have the question and it populates it. And so it's a very non-intimidating environment once you create an account specific to ChatGPT. There's also Bard, which is the one by Bing. There was another one that you mentioned. Microsoft has one.
So yeah, Google is Bard, and then
Okay, thank you.
Microsoft they've partnered with OpenAI, and so Bing is powered by ChatGPT now.
Oh, I
So
saw
you
that
can
a
go in and
headline. Okay. Yeah.
use it. I still just prefer using ChatGPT because I guess like so much of what I do is just very like testing out new things. Like I'm not
Yeah.
going out and being like, you can use Bing right now if you like, I want to plan a trip, and it'll help you like using ChatGPT to like plan this trip.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, so that's a free, easy way to kind of try it out. And then we've talked about Poe.com. So POE.com it's a project created by Quora, Quora, and it compares a bunch of different large language models. So you can see ChatGPT, ChatGPT-4, Bard, Claude, which is created by a company called Anthropic, and it's considered the ethical AI, and that it was not trained on human responses. It's all
Tell us that one
machine
again.
learning.
What's that one again?
That is Anthropic's product Claude, Claude.
Okay. All right. I'm going
And
to check those and
they
the
hate
others out.
Canadians. So I haven't
Because
been
you
able
don't
to
have it in
find
Canada.
any.
Yeah. Because you're in Canada. That's right. And so you don't have access. Is there a timeline of when you're going to get access so you can start testing it out?
No, unfortunately not. I
Mm,
haven't been able to find any information, which is really downer. Because like I said, I'm someone who I really do believe in like the ethical use of technology, and like I
sure.
would so happily switch over to like using Claude, but maybe one day.
Maybe one day we'll wait and see. Okay, very cool. Okay, as we kind of not too much wrap up, but get a little bit further into it, what are ways that they should not use the tool? We've heard about the
Um,
confidentiality. Companies now are putting together sort of a guide on how to use and not to use or don't use at all, right? And so, is there any quick thoughts on the not to use? Obviously, confidential information. Anything else?
yeah, I just think I always talk about the Reddit rule, which is that if you wouldn't post it into an anonymous message board, don't put it in a chat GPT.
Hmm.
I was raised on the internet. I learned very early on that like we don't go putting things out on the internet that we don't want people bringing back to us in a few years and being like, would you like to be held accountable for this?
Hey, yeah.
Um, so I would say if you wouldn't put it onto Reddit, don't put it in chat GPT. I'm not giving it my employer's social security number.
Sure.
Um, but like I use it for like my personal business stuff. But like it's nothing like I said that I would be ashamed that if it was ever to come back and haunt me. It's like
Exactly. And find it.
it's just me talking through ideas about my business and how I can, improve or, tell me how to make a travel and entertainment policy because I need to make one and I've never seen
Mm,
it before.
hmm.
A lot of these things are standardized documents. Like we
Yeah.
have an idea that this is what they're supposed to look like. I see people that are concerned about plagiarism, and I'm just it's a contract, guys. Like
Yeah.
it's supposed to be standardized and plagiarized. Like
Sure. Sure.
that's the way it's supposed to be. So don't go asking ChatGPT to like write a children's book for you and then publishing it, and all of that. But
Right.
there's just so many great ways to use it. Like I always struggle to think of like unethical ways because I'm just like, no, this is so cool. Please don't ruin this for me. Please don't take away
Right.
my tool.
Please don't take away the tool. I just had a thought as I've been seeing a lot kind of from the lens of human resources, and so many admins are a part of that culture component in surveying staff like once or twice a year, whether you use a tool like SurveyMonkey, again, another technology tool, and Slack and all these things. I would be actually curious to inspire some of our listeners to use it and test it out to say, we want to survey our 155 in the field construction workers on how things are going, populate 20 survey questions.
Excellent use case for it. Yeah.
And that would be really amazing. And you could cherry pick, go long to always subtract, which is great, and use it for different things like that. So for anyone that has a culture component, that would be really great. And maybe, and I'm just obviously assuming it can do whatever I'm asking it to do, right? Come up with a really great lunch and learn idea. I've suggested in the past, find a YouTube video of a TEDx, watch it for 12 minutes as a team, order in lunch. But I'm sure, because while that sounds like a great idea, there's many other ways to produce a lunch and learn inside an organization and kind of taking the lead on getting those ideas ready. And you could even probably plan a whole year's worth of ideas for culture components, whether it's once a month or quarterly, and have that already pre-planned. Kind of going back to the question asked earlier about just how to kind of save time. I think
Mhm.
it's really great. And I loved how you used the thought partner. It is your thought partner. Even though quote doesn't truly talk back to you, right? It's communicating with you through that text form, which is what you mentioned.
Well,
As
it
we kind of
encourages the
go ahead.
thoughts for me in a lot of ways. Like
Right.
I
Gets
think
it
that like for
started.
me, exactly, a starting point is I need a prompt to get started, and then my brain's good to like go off and like, think of all the other things.
Yeah.
But just getting that initiated it's a boon. Like it's just amazing for
Mm.
creativity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Especially when it's 4 o'clock on Friday.
Yeah.
If you're thinking your brain is behaving like 4 o'clock on a Friday on Tuesday at 9 a.m., this could be that thought partner for you. And so I really love how you're using that language and then the prompt components. Okay. As we're getting here to the end, wrapping it up, I've just loved the conversation, Jessica. I'm so excited that you gave me this time for all of us to be able to take in. What should they be doing? Which kind of also leads into where can we follow you? Where can we stay in touch with you? I know you're very active on LinkedIn. What should assistants be doing to stay up to date on that latest, right? We were a little worried that how far this episode would release to when we recorded, because stuff's changing daily. Give us some of that wisdom so we know how to stay in the game.
So my favorite resource that I am willing to pay $12 a month for is the AI Exchange newsletter. Rachel Woods is the
Oh,
creator, and she is a data scientist. And she sends out a newsletter twice a week, and it's not, specific to admins, but for me as someone who's, trying to stay like abreast of like everything that's going on in AI, she does an incredible job of breaking down the current news updates as well as kind of explaining things in a way that I can understand because what people have to remember is this is so new. This is brand new. Like
we have to remember it is
all,
literally new. Yeah.
yeah, like all the experts, like we've been doing this for 6 months, guys. Like we are learning as we go. I have
Yeah.
a presentation coming up where I'm trying to teach people Zapier, and like I'm learning Zapier at the same
At the
time.
same time. Yeah.
Is just, yeah, the options are out there, and it's just kind of like trying to figure out how to capture them. And I would say like AI Exchange is a great one. I use TikTok. I know people are like, TikTok, that's for kids. I'm like, TikTok has thought leaders of every industry more than willing to give their free guidance.
Yeah.
And like looking at things like ChatGPT or AI or really any type of like trend that you're interested in, like TikTok is a wealth of information in bite-sized amounts.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, I also just recently, I did launch a newsletter for admins. So if anybody is interested in finding out more
Perfect.
specific to admin information,
Great.
on my website, there's a registration page for the newsletter. And I'm also kicking off a podcast soon with Candace Birmingham of Admin Avenues. She's based out of
Yes.
Australia.
Yes. I
And
just saw that announced and she said it's coming. That's
so we are
awesome.
going to be launching the Future Focused Admin
Yeah.
podcast. And it's going to be all about just kind of like our unique experiences getting to where we are, and as well as like what you can do to continue to stay relevant and like on
Yeah.
top, like as this industry changes. Because I do think we are at the cusp of a very large shift in our industry. And
Yeah.
the difference is going to be, do I want to be the strategic business partner who leads AI operations within my organization? Or do I want to get left out and like, be part of the industry that is unfortunately, not as relevant these days? So I
Yeah.
do believe that learning AI is just the next step in terms of like operating, office technologies.
Yeah, I think that's really great. And I think adding that to your suite of strengths and having it be a unique identifier about you. And even though it is a universal tool, you could become someone who is a developing master right now, and it's truly a master, a developing master into this is absolutely how I use the tool. And especially in interviews today, to the future is what I'm seeing. Some are going to need to be able to speak to how you're capitalizing on that technology. And that
I'm
can
already
still,
seeing
yeah, you're seeing
I'm
that.
already seeing posts that are asking for ChatGPT in executive assistant roles.
Yeah.
Something you'll see like trending, like is things will start like in freelance and they kind of trickle down to like
Yep.
the regular mainstream work. And the job postings that I'm seeing right now for freelance is everybody that's a virtual assistant or an executive assistant or chief of staff. There's an expectation that you are familiar with ChatGPT and AI, and I
Yeah.
absolutely think it'll be the difference
Yeah, I
between
think being able
elevating
to
your
speak
career.
to that. Yeah. And getting into the entry point and playing around with it is really, really great. And that's what I was doing all day yesterday. Awesome. We are going to have in the show notes for both YouTube and the episode, all the things that came up so that everyone can go there and bounce out into all the hyperlinks. Jessica, this is awesome. I know that you're on LinkedIn. We'll have your URL for your website there. Everyone should go and absolutely sign up. I know I and Leah are going to sign up for the newsletter. And I'm just really grateful that the universe puts you in this position and that gave
Yeah.
you, especially with your extroverted personality, it's so easy to listen to you continue to talk about something that you're clearly becoming very passionate about and giving us the inspiration. And I say me, because as I said, I was the student on this episode when we first started recording, and there's just so much opportunity for everyone. And so Jessica, I really appreciate you. And I'm so grateful. Any closing thoughts for us?
No, I really appreciate being here. It's so lovely to chat with you. And what a cool little experience to start, to have your live podcast like this. You've been really an inspiration to me. So I appreciate you and your mentorship. So it's been great to
Awesome.
be here.
Thanks, Jessica. Have an awesome